Okay, so my name is Scott Seeley, working for MySpace. We're co-presenting with Evan from Google. What we're starting with here is just going to take a look at OpenSocial 0.9. This is the stuff that's coming next. First, I want to go over and just give you some idea of what does the OpenSocial process actually look like. That is, how do we go from, hey, I've got an idea, to, hey, here's something that you as an app developer get to use. We start the whole thing out, again, by using an open source process. This means that, in principle at least, everybody who participates represents themselves. Anybody can come up with an idea, and it gets discussed on its merits, not on the presenter. So then it's a very important thing to understand, is that if you have an idea that you think is very important, that would make your life easier, it'll probably make everybody else's life easier as well. Those are types of things that we want to see get discussed. These discussions then happen on what we call the spec list. URLs up there. Again, these discussions come through, people come up with ideas, they present them, we discuss whether or not they sound good, they have merit, and if enough people think they do, we then move on, we will put them into what we call proposals. The current list of proposals, again, if you want to see where we're at right now, there's about 20 some odd proposals listed at that URL. And again, what we do there is we take these ideas, we put them into something that can actually go into the specification, describe the behavior, figure out what the thing's going to do. And then finally, we have, as these things get voted on and added to the spec, we have a draft of what does 0.9 look like today being maintained at this particular location. Okay? So the spec process, how do you get involved, what do you do? What does it look like? Specs take about, each iteration, we try to keep those down to 3 or 4 month chunks. During that 3 or 4 months, we'll spend 6 to 8 weeks discussing stuff. What do we want to have in this next iteration? What are the ideas that we think would be good? What makes sense? After that time, after that time period, the discussion starts to settle down. We'll then say, okay, here's the timeline for the rest of the period. We'll allocate 2 weeks then to say, okay, take these things, make them into real proposals. We'll vote on them, and if the thing gets approved by the community, it becomes part of the spec. If somebody disagrees with the proposal, and again, that's anybody in the community disagrees, we address their concerns. Again, this is an open source process. If you don't like the way things are going and you think you have a valid concern, we're going to address it. Okay? After these all get addressed, they get incorporated into the draft. We vote on the draft to say, okay, here's what 0.9 looks like. Here's what 1.0 looks like. And then we all vote and say, yes, the comments that you took, the proposals, you incorporated them correctly, and we go on. And as soon as we ship the item, we say this is the draft spec, we vote on it, we then start the discussions for the next round. Right now, we're in the phase where we're discussing the proposals and voting on them. We got about another week left in that. On December 12th, or thereabouts, depending on how the discussions go, we actually plan on having the 0.9 draft complete, which means on December 13th, we want to start hearing your proposals again. One of the things that there's to note about the list is that there's Evan was looking at the list, and you mentioned yesterday there's about 12 of us that are really active. That means there's 12 of us that are really opinionated. Evan and I are 2 of those guys, so I'm recognizing that. What you'll see in there is you'll see different people participating. Like Joseph Smar, who you saw speak earlier. Joseph is really big on the portable context. So every time we think about touching person, Joseph pipes up and at least says, good idea. Otherwise, for the rest of the conversation, Joseph's fairly quiet. We have other people who do the exact same type of thing depending on what they're interested in. That's good, okay? If there's an application area that you develop, we want to see you give your feedback. So if you're really interested in advancing gadgets, making things simpler there, we want to hear your feedback. Again, it's mostly systems guys, those 12 opinionated folks. We're all building the containers. We build sample apps to see if our ideas make sense, but we don't build sample apps that then get deployed to 2 million people. So we really need you guys to start participating in these things, coming in and saying, hey, this is where you're right, this is where you're wrong. If we could also just get your names to find out who you are, so we can at least bring you into the conversation when you have some idea, that would also be great. But anything you can do to participate, we'd really like to see. Now, Evan's going to talk a little bit more about what's going on.
Thanks, Scott. That was loud. So if you all leave here today with 2 things you remember about 0.9, the first is what Scott said. We really want you to get involved. The people working on this are very passionate, very opinionated, and aren't writing apps on top of the platform, except for the sample apps. So please, please get involved. If there are features you think the platform should have, go out and suggest that we add them to the platform. The second thing I want you to leave with is the fact that 0.9 has some awesome features coming that's going to make your lives as developers a lot easier. So how do you write apps in OpenSocial 0.9? Well, of course, you can keep doing it the way you do today. We're not going to remove any functionality and stop your apps from working. And the way people develop apps today is client-side JavaScript rendering, and also using gadgets.io make request to make a request to your home server to get the data for the page or the HTML for the page, which you then set with inner HTML. The two new ways we're very excited about. First, you can generate HTML on your own server. We call this proxied content. I saw a little clapping there. So content href equals http://yourserver.com. 2 dots there for some reason. The social data is sent to your server's post parameters. So if you need access to a friends list, we'll send you the friends list. If you need access to activities, we'll send you the activities. This includes all of the OpenSocial fields. So if you need to get access to someone's birthday, we'll send you the birthday. And then the data goes out to your server, comes back through and gets proxied. And the response we embed, you can embed OSML tags in the output as well. So you can do things like OpenSocial person selector or OpenSocial user badge and display complex UI widgets for the user. We're also adding OpenSocial templates. Templates is a drop-in replacement for client-side JavaScript rendering. So if you're using inner HTML on the client or any other fun ways of creating HTML with JavaScript, you can now use templates, and it handles almost all the complex details for you. It also offloads processing to the container. And this is not obvious from first glance as to why this is important, but we heard from almost all the developers before that scalability is one of the biggest concerns. And if you're processing a request every time someone views a profile view of your application, your servers will melt. And if all of you move to Google App Engine will melt. At some point, social apps have some of the highest activity of all apps on the internet, and we need to find ways to take processing and make it more easy to process for you, the developers. It also improves latency because it doesn't necessarily have to do a round trip to your servers. And of course, you can embed the OSML tags in the output as well. So I had a detailed write-up of all the steps you need to actually work with HTML on your own server, but it turned out example XML and HTML made the case much more clearly. So this is actually a nearly complete gadget here with some comments in the PHP where I would have put code to make it work. So up here, content href equals your server, and this OS people request says, hey, this is the data I want you to send over to my server. And then on your server side, you have your PHP or your ASP or JSP or whatever server language you like, and you take the post parameter and put it into viewer friends. So the post parameter will come in as probably JSON, although we're finalizing the details. And you'll say for each viewer friend as friend, if friend has a birthday, echo, your friend's birthday is January 1st, 2002, a very young friend. So, and this is a complete end-to-end application. We've heard a lot of feedback from developers that this is a useful way of developing apps. A lot of developers today use gadgets.io make requests to actually build their apps this way, and they just, at the initial page load, the first thing they do is make a request to their home server and get back the HTML. So we think this is coming up with best practices and actually making the container support this as opposed to hacking through with the gadgets.io make request. Next slide. The second way we're excited about is OpenSocial templates. Again, we have a complete application here, the same birthday application using OpenSocial templates. The key is that you still make the same data request. So either way, you say, hey, this is the data I need access to inside my application. And then the OpenSocial templates, this syntax here where it says div repeat equals friends, name's birthday is birthday, will be processed by the container somewhere. And that will either be on the container server or in the user's browser. But you as the developer don't care. All you do is write the template, and the container will process it for you. Next slide. So those are the two features we're really excited about, and I think it's the best way to explain how it works from the developer perspective, but there are a number of other features in 0.9 that will make your lives easier. One big one, which I touched on up there, is no more CData blocks, unless you really like adding CData in the content section. So even with static content, that syntax where content href equals URL works with both dynamic content, where you're rendering requests every time, as well as static content. So you can take that CData section, create a standalone static HTML page, and put your content there, and use actual HTML editor to edit the contents as opposed to having it show up all as non-syntax highlighted in your in Eclipse or wherever you're editing in. So this works for both proxy dynamic content as well as static content. OSML, I touched on this before, but there are tags for complex UI functionality, people selector, user badge, share app link. And actually, we'd love your feedback on what tags would be useful. We have a proposal out for 5 tags and a backlog of another 5 or 6 we think might be interesting. But this is all things we think might be interesting. We don't know because we don't have the app developers really speaking up and saying, please, please give us this. And tags are processed, again, in proxied responses as well as in templates. So you can use them whichever way you're developing applications. Named views, down here you'll see it says view equals canvas about. One thing we find right now is that OpenSocial apps have to download all the HTML or fake navigation where user clicks on a link, you download some more HTML and blast it into the page. This allows you to segment your application into different HTML pages, and when you actually use request navigate to navigate between your different pages. So you'd say request navigate to the canvas about page. Next slide. App versioning, we will support most likely some form of app versioning, so you can run a golden one in production as well as have a different version running on Sandbox. We think this will be very useful for developers because generally speaking, you have to run apps live to have access to your same permissions and app data that you had with your non-live apps, with your production app. And there are many, many other changes. Please visit the spec list and check them out. We welcome your feedback. So 2 things to leave with today out of 0.9. 1, get involved. We need your input. Come join in. It's as easy as sending an email. All you have to do is say, hey, it'd be really great if we had a feature that did X. And the second is you're going to like 0.9. We've added a couple of key features to the platform that will make your lives a lot easier. Sandbox releases in 2 to 3 months, so expect to see it available. And some of this is actually already available today on Orchid and High 5, but there's more features coming down the pipeline. The features available today, templates will work on almost any container with a script tag. And the content href equals will not work with sending data. So it won't actually send the people along with the request, send the friends, but you can use the proxied content today on Orchid. And actually, I just checked on High 5, and I think it's working on High 5 now as well. And if you have questions or want to find out more or want to start hacking on it, we're going to have an hour-long breakout session today to work on features, try out templates, try out proxy content, and just generally get your feedback. So thank you very much. I think we'll take questions actually at the breakout session. That's probably a better place for them. So if you're very interested, yes, sorry, one question.
If I wanted to do something tomorrow, learn more, do I have any opportunity?
Yes, indeed. If you want to do something tomorrow, a few things you can do. 1, go check out OS templates. There's a link here in the presentation, and I think we'll be sending this out afterwards. If not, I'll send it out to the spec list.
This presentation right here is in there?
Yes, this link is in this link right here will let you use templates. We don't have documentation on the, sorry.
This presentation, can you make it available?
Yes.
And then the spec discussions like tomorrow?
Yes. Oh, yes, that's a good call out. We're having a spec discussion tomorrow about all the 0.9 features. So people who want to discuss what we're building for 0.9 and give their feedback in the process, it's here at MySpace tomorrow. There's a sign-up form that's linked to from somewhere in the community forums. Check the recent posts and you'll find it. Yes, and there are features in progress that we're going to start, keep track on the spec list. You'll see when features are available for working with. Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. So if I could give you guys any personal advice, I would corner those 2 people and not let them leave until they've answered every question, because they really are the 2 people that are at the center of this driving where we're going. And then after you talk to them, make sure you go to the list and you re-add what you said and make sure that they know about it, because you really drive this community, and I cannot underscore that enough. So some other housekeeping notes to go on to your question about slides. All of the slides you've seen today will be on opensocial.org within a day or so, if not today. And then basically moving into the lunchtime stuff, one housekeeping note. So if you're with press or journalists, there's a room down that hallway around the corner called Sin City. It's a large conference room, and that's where we're going to be doing anything with the app developer community or the providers that will be speaking today. So if the press and journalists want to grab lunch, hopefully first so that they can move on into the other room, we'll get that started right away. And then the other piece I wanted to talk about is the unconference board over here. It's the one unconference thing going on. You have probably till the end of lunch to fill out any subjects that you want to talk about. And then the last piece, Lane from Google is going to be hosting all our lunchtime activities. We're going to give everybody about 15, 20 minutes to get up, grab their food, start to eat it, digest a bit, and then we're going to kick right into the next festivities with Lane. Okay? Thank you all very much. Lunch is in the back corner. Thanks.